Hello there. Welcome back to Sonic Heroes. You can just call me Stent. Last time, we finished up with Team Chaotix, somehow getting a clutch victory against the 7th special stage, the dreaded one. This time, however, we're going to be playing as the quote, cool kids on the block. Team Dark. Year of Shadow, baby. Yeah, needless to say, if you've heard some of my past streams, I do have some issues with Shadow's characterization as of recently, most of them arguably starting here, but I'm sure you've heard them elsewhere at this point. For now, let's just enjoy the fun cutscene with random E-Series robot here who was just introduced specifically for this game. Not even any sort of foreshadowing like Cream did. Instead, it's just an E-Series robot here, except he's replaced the Pew Pew for twin Rat-a-tat-tats. Even so, I'd still say this is a pretty cool scene regardless. Just tons of fun destruction to be had. Still haven't been able to find any sort of retranslated mod for this, so we're stuck with the English text. I'll be honest, I always sort of incited that, what Omega meant by that is if Shadow and Rouge get distracted at all, Omega himself would destroy them, which, I mean, considering what we know of poor Omega here, I definitely say seems rather accurate, but I will admit, even though Omega definitely is a fun character, especially in the extended media, like Reboot Archie especially, from what I've heard and seen, he's definitely one of the more fun characters, even though he's arguably the worst power-type character in the game, mostly because he lacks the belly flop, he lacks any sort of grounded projectile attack. His main thing is just the standard punch attack, which sends you gliding all across the arena, which will probably get me killed at some certain points, but despite that, he's still relatively fun to play. Just goes to show the strength of the power-type characters in this game. I have been thinking a fair bit as to who exactly the best characters in this game are. At least in terms of their skill sets, like, obviously, in terms of skill sets, Sonic and Shadow are relatively the same, not counting for Team Blast, which obviously work a little differently. Instead of Sonic just getting a free light speed attack at the end of his Team Blast, we get the time stop, which, you know, useful for racking up time bonuses, but doesn't change the fact that Team Dark's levels are arguably the longest, so especially when it comes to some of the later levels, we may be here for a little bit, so get comfy. Another thing I've also been thinking about in the Stent rambles about his week segment is, with the latest Tales tube, we finally got a quote new voice for Omega, which is basically just Roger again with a voice synthesizer, and it honestly sort of feels criminal as to how they've dealt with Omega's voice. Obviously, he's been one of the least consistent voice casts in the entire game. Well, entire series, more rather. I think mostly just due to his infrequency of appearances. Like, I know that Around Colors, he was voiced by Vic Mignogna before the whole unpersoning thing happened, which I can only hope that actually, it's probably best if I don't go into that. You're probably not here for me to talk about that. Or are you? That might be a, I might think them... Sorry, just thinking of potential, channel ideas. Not sure whether you'd want to hear my opinion on, such divisive matters, whether or not you'd rather just have a place to escape from all that, which is respectable. It's something that I've been yearning for in the past as well, but on a little side tangent, I do have my own particular sort of headcanon voice for really all the East series robots. Oh, I should probably just turn that down a little bit. There we go. Maybe something I'll delve into a little bit later, but for now, our main prerogative here is getting back to Lost Jungle in hopes of getting the 5th and final Chaos Emerald, because I forgot to do that last time. Which is crazy, because you'd think that one would be one I'd not so easily miss. I mean, I guess if all things fail, it shouldn't be too difficult to miss in the Team Rose segment, but it'd be useful to just get it out the way. Honestly, I feel there's not really much to say about going for this level the 3rd time. Obviously, 4th time around it'll be a lot shorter, which, you know, small mercy. This is sort of one thing which I've come to appreciate about this game, however. Fairly certain I already went into this in the chaotic segment, but the idea of having characters act as sort of optional difficulties, something which arguably has been a thing in the series since Furry and Knuckles, really, because of course you got Tails with his flight acting as easy mode, you got Sonic as the normal mode, and then Knuckles with his level design and lower jump height as the hard mode, and here we have something relatively similar with all the different teams acting as various different difficulty options, like obviously Team Dark being the hard mode. I can't help but wonder whether or not that would be a good means of actually integrating more characters in future games. I mean, I have a feeling that's not exactly something they're inclined to do, considering they're more sort of going for the more conventional difficulty options with the more recent games. Like Forces obviously had normal and hard mode, which I can more accurately consider journalist mode and normal mode, and it's sort of the same story with Frontiers, where you have... Honestly, I don't really see the purpose of normal mode if hard mode basically nets you the true ending. Like, I can understand sort of easy mode for journalist's sake, because I'm gonna be honest, aside from Final Horizons, this series has historically not been all that difficult. I mean, there's certain games which sort of bump the habits, bump the tradition, as it were. But generally speaking, these games tend not to be too difficult outside of, well, the optional sort of super hard mode, which obviously this game sort of first premiered and hasn't really been seen past Shadow the Hedgehog, which honestly I kind of feel was a missed opportunity. The closest we've had more recently is Extreme mode, which isn't really a more conventional difficulty mode, more just sort of one-hit deaths, which... okay, I guess, it's something at the very least. Honestly, when it comes to a sort of hardest difficulty mode for a Frontier-style game, I would honestly prefer to see something more akin to... oh, hold on. I forgot we weren't in 4x3. Don't need to bring that up for a while, I think. But yeah. Sorry, I lost track of my thoughts. Super hard mode, that was it. Honestly, I feel the more conventional way of going about a... let's say more conventional, the arguably better way of going about a difficulty mode would be more accurately something more along the lines of critical mode from the Kingdom Hearts series. Or I suppose more accurately level 1 critical, where you're sort of at a set level, so you're... actually, just trying to find the best way of wording it. It's been another one of those days. I get to the end of the day, a little bit tired. Always rather tired, to be honest. Feel I really need to do something about that at some point. But yeah, critical mode, where essentially start off with all these skills and the option to just retain level 1, which technically you could do in Frontiers anyway, you just not bother with any of the handing in any of your cocos or seeds or whatever. And while you still can put out a good amount of damage and arguably do well against bosses which were balanced around that sort of level 1. At least that was the case in terms of some of the boss fights, like obviously the data organization fights, lingering will, etc. Perhaps not stuff like from vanilla Kingdom Hearts 2, because that's what I'm more sort of thinking of. Kind of weird that none of the stone pillars fall in that segment. You'd think they would with Team Dark. And now here we come to the part where Omega might start to falter a little bit on very, very small platforms. Let's go the power route this time, why not? Very nearly lost Shadow there. No, I don't need Shadow for this. I can just easily destroy these weak stone shields myself. I very nearly died there. Okay. I will admit, when it comes to this game, I've not really been making the best use of Team Blast, I think, because generally I'm the sort of player that doesn't really tend to use it, more sort of makes use of the other stuff in my arsenal. Like, right here. You could use Team Blast for that, or you could just wipe them out with the Omega. Look at that, I still get a massive score bonus from it anyways. So I suppose... I'll probably think a little bit more about the whole critical mode thing a little bit later on, once I got my thoughts straight. Because right now, admittedly... Sorry, just... Okay, just... What I wanted to try and say is that I've finally, after all this time, decided, you know, since it is the Year of Shadow... Yep. I figured I'd save Team Rose for last, and Team Dark happened to be the next on the list, so, planets aligned, as it were. Nice to see you here regardless, BZ. I was just about to say, again, I was just thinking about, you know, the Shadow move. I say Shadow. Project Shadow, the fan film, that was the thing I was trying to get at before I noticed chat was actually active for once. Yeah. Finally went and decided to finally watch it, which admittedly I'd sort of hold off on for a little bit, because admittedly I've heard a fair bit of controversy around these sort of big fan projects. Like, the biggest example for me obviously being a lot of the controversy surrounding stuff like Omens and... of course not. Yeah, a lot of the controversies around Omens, with its trying to monetize itself, and the whole Maria thing. And the other one, of course, being one at least that comes to mind, being Sonic and Tails R, the audio drama series which features a lot of old Sonic voice acting alumni, which, let's just say I've heard the controversies about what Ryan Drummond and the voice actor for Tails and that have been doing behind closed doors. It's rather an indication of just how down bad this series can get. Well, down bad the fans of this series can get, which I will admit I'm not exactly doing much against, given how I look. Anyway, since we're here at the Hedgehog, thankfully, since Omega basically has an almost identical moveset to Knuckles, that basically means we can take him out the same way as Knuckles, which is, while he's doing his rotisserie attack, and just get in there and wail on it as I mash the attack button. I don't think I'll be able to wipe it out quite as fast as Knuckles, but I'm sure we'll get quite close. There you go. Alright, so I'm just going to get rid of the border so we can actually see the beautiful widescreen. There we go. Oh yeah, kind of forgot about the conductor's wife for a second there. Yeah, I've heard a lot of comments about that particular design. And I have a feeling I'm not exactly helping matters with, again, my design. We've got Rouge here, and admittedly some of my character designs, which aren't exactly the most. Well, I try to give him at least somewhat above board, but I'm sure you'll see them on the channel eventually, and let's just say, I'm sure you'll get what I mean by that. All in all, yes, I have to admit that the Phantom that I have ended up anchoring myself to is not so much down bad as down horrendous, as the youth often say, the youth. You can sort of tell how old I am, given, you know, this game was pretty much at the height of my childhood, good old 2004. Back when I was like 8 years old, 9 years old, and the world seemed so much simpler. I was thinking I could have gone with the I know there's a mod which sort of restores Rouge's quote-unquote classic outfit, which is basically just her model from Shadow the Hedgehog, which honestly I was never the biggest fan of. I get why they went with it, but honestly I think I'd rather, it's really the coloration of that particular version of Rouge's outfit. If it was more, especially with the shading where it's just everyone's all matte instead of all glossy, it tends, in my opinion, to make a lot of the characters, especially Rouge's outfit in Shadow the Hedgehog, just a bit more ugly, in my opinion. I am fairly certain Rouge's classic outfit in, I say classic, her normal outfit in this game would look at least fairly good, with better coloration and I didn't know about that particular route. I just very nearly fell to my death there. Yeah, it's one thing I've noticed that generally the Phantom seems to get all excited whenever any of the characters are in a new outfit. Which I do sort of get, you know, given how seemingly static the whole cast is, but I will admit, especially with some of my later streams, I feel as though I've sort of admittedly gotten back into the complaining of a Sonic fan when I, after Frontiers especially, I wanted to start to be more of a Sonic enjoyer, which admittedly after Final Horizons and Superstars did test my patience there a little bit. I wonder how many times we're going to see that particular animation. Yeah, I know a lot of people especially like Blaze's outfit in that game. I kind of feel I should go back to that again at some point, since the initial video I did on it was in all likelihood scuffed. Then again, I don't tend to go back and look at a lot of my particular streams because I'm pretty sure I just crumpled in on myself with all the cringe. I mean, it's going to be inevitable at some point, but getting past that is going to be the particular challenge for me. There we go. Anyways, yeah, back to what I was gonna say about the Project Shadow fan film. Admittedly, I went into it expecting it to like it a lot less than I did. I was expecting to go into it and thinking at the end of it, yeah, that was pretty okay, and you know, just sort of a lot of the particular quality, quote, aspects of fan films will probably take me out of it a fair bit, which honestly it didn't as much as I was expecting. I mean, obviously there's some effects which aren't exactly the best looking, which again, oh hey Brian, we were just talking about the Project Shadow fan film. I'd personally recommend checking it out, as yeah, I wasn't quite expecting it to be... Well, I thank you regardless for your belief in me, BZ. It's appreciated. That being said, well, I do want to learn how to make videos eventually. I feel aside from the look... I feel aside from the look I really need to get down and define what sort of streamer personality I want to be, because right now it's just a whole bunch of awkward silences and me rambling on a fair bit, which I appreciate at least some of you finding it a bit entertaining, but again, considering all the other streamers out there, I really need to. I feel as though I need to really find my niche, as it were, which, I mean, I guess this is it, in a little bit of a fashion, just some of the older Sonic games in particular, like, there are definitely a few Sonic games I still want to stream, like Unleashed, which, again, is a, especially on the 360, it's a game which, for the longest time, I've respected, and at the same time kind of hated from a gameplay standpoint. I'm hoping on stream at least at some point to try and change that, but yeah. With regards to the fan film in particular, I feel the scene that really stuck out to me was basically the bit which I'm pretty sure all of us were expecting to happen, which was how the whole Maria's death aspect was handled, which honestly I thought was handled quite particularly well, to be honest. Though I wasn't entirely certain as with regards to Shadow's characterization, at least at the start, where he's a which, I mean, I do sort of get it, he's more childlike, he's more, innocent per se, just not really certain I'm a particular fan of how it was handled with him using, words like awesome. That may just me being a bit old-fashioned, however. I can't believe I actually got that Lightspeed Dash segment there. That's, usually never happens. I will admit, though, one sort of big critique I have about the fan film is arguably one I have about the... Yeah, I suppose there is that aspect, him being a bit more of an instant cinnamon roll before the world made him cold and cruel. Yeah, I do sort of get that aspect at the very least. It's just not admittedly how I personally perceive Shadow, but it did sort of remind me, thinking about it, of sort of young Mewtwo from the Origin of Mewtwo special, at least the extended version, where ironically enough, Shadow Mewtwo makes a bond with this young girl character who ends up dying, and he ends up losing his memory afterwards. Just saying. Kinda crazy how much characterization Shadow ended up taking from Mewtwo, even if it was unintentional. Yeah, my biggest critique with regards to Project Shadow is one which I have with the series as a whole, is that I'm not exactly... I felt as though the characterization of Maria herself was fairly light. I didn't really get the whole, I didn't necessarily feel particularly strongly about her character, which I feel is more so something that you can also levy at the series in general, where Maria as a character ultimately acts less as a character and more as just a plot device for Shadow. I mean, I do sort of get it from the whole, you know, they look sort of similar and they have similar abilities and both have golden super forms, but honestly, if there was one character I feel would fill a more Vegeta role in the Sonic series, I'd probably throw it over to either Metal Sonic or Jet, to be honest. I mostly say Jet mostly because his voice reminds me of Vegeta in the Ocean dub, particularly. And, you know, same brash, cocky attitude. There's no way I'm gonna lose, Kakarot! You know, that sort of thing. It's sort of a shame too, because I really feel that outside of the first two Riders games, I feel you could still do a fair bit with Jet, I think. Or maybe that's just me pining for another Riders game, because, well, I still really like the first one. I played it, fairly recently, and it still plays rather... It's still rather fun, I think. I could definitely see why they, why we still have a competitive scene for it, though. I will admit, still kind of disappointed about Zero Gravity / Shooting Star Story. Because there's a lot of stuff in it which is definitely, like, cool and over the top kind of way, like the fact that Sonic literally fights the final boss in a black hole. That's the sort of over-the-top stuff which I miss from this series. Just literally fighting the final boss in a black hole. But then, of course, Free Riders happened, and I'm just gonna say it. Free Riders, at least from what I've seen at the very least, basically covers all the aspects of what I consider my personal worst Sonic game. Of basically the whole series, including the Game Gear ones. It's like, it has bad characterization, a fairly non-existent story, and gameplay which just straight up doesn't work. If any Sonic game were to take the title of the worst, I'd probably throw it over to that, in all honesty, because at least with 06 and Rise of Lyric, you can control the characters. They still worked in some fashion. Whereas Free Riders just doesn't. This is a little bit of an issue I have with the Team Dark, Team Blast, because you get to stuff like this where you have to wait for the thing to clear like that, and you just end up spending a whole lot of time in levels longer than you might have initially anticipated. And I'm pretty sure I could have sworn I was dead there. It's almost kind of a shame too, thinking about it, because I feel that Shadow the Hedgehog would have been a perfect opportunity to really get a better glimpse into the characterization of Maria, who exactly she is as a person, aside from generally idealistic, generally perfect girl who just happens to suffer from AIDS. Because, let's face it, that's basically what it is. She basically has AIDS. I hate to be the one to break it. That is basically what it is it not? I feel as though I'm gonna get into trouble for saying that. That's basically what it is. Well, technically it's, from what I remember, it was classified as NIDS, which is basically the same thing. Except, considering it's neuro, I'd assume that it has something to do with her brain, like her brain not exactly causing her immune system to function properly, as opposed to it just failing all on its own. Never really gotten much of a in-depth explanation about that, to be honest, though. I don't suppose under Flynn we really will. Yeah, NIDS. Yeah, I'd assume there's have to be at least some difference, because I mean, unless there's some stuff that happened on the arc which we don't know about, I'm fairly certain Maria wouldn't have had much of an opportunity to actually, you know, get that. At least in the way they usually assume people get it. I mean, it was technically the 50s after all, so she could have accidentally shared a needle. That's the weird thing too about this series as well, because considering Adventure 2 technically came out in 2001, that would mean that the arc was technically built in the 1950s, if not earlier. Which, you know, obviously for time scaling, I'm fairly certain the technology to build a space colony wouldn't have been possible in post-war America. You know, unless World War II really got out of hand. With like, lasers and such. Then again, we have basically Coruscant right here, so I'm guessing that the Sonic series, at least in some way or another, takes place in the future. I mean, at least, I'd have to at least assume. Given we have, you know, Y2K California and Coruscant. Still feel as though they should have dropped the whole team fight aspect, considering basically none of the teams really have any good justification to fight each other. Like, you could argue Team Sonic versus Team Dark, but aside from that, a lot of the justifications for these team fights have always been historically quite weak, I felt. I mean, the other one might very well also be Team Chaotix versus Team Rose. At least there was some justification there. Alright, get over here, Vector. It's time you paid your electric bill. Back to your plumbing job. There we go. And that's the last we'll see of Vector until the next stream. Kind of a shame, really. I still love that guy. I'm hoping that we still get the Chaotix in the upcoming Knuckles series, because I've heard that's supposedly coming out soon-ish. Then again, for whatever reason, Sega and Sonic Team have been sort of making a dedicated effort to basically ensure that Knuckles Chaotix is removed from the public conscience. It's like we have all these, you know, collections of all these past Sonic games, you know, Sonic CD, the Game Gear games, and yet there's some, you know, Sonic Spinball, the one which canonically has Sally Acorn in it, and yet Knuckles Chaotix has never gotten a port outside of its initial 32X release, which I never got. It's just... Sure, it was weird and experimental, but surely that deserves to be better remembered than Sonic Spinball. Considering Sega basically wants people to forget about Sally Acorn as well. It's just so bizarre to me. Well, I've had some more thoughts with regards to an earlier stream with the whole canonicity versus accessibility arguments, which basically means that, considering the only way to really play this is the Abandonware PC version, which not many people have access to, and emulation, basically. In the public conscious, basically going off of the games ported to Steam, this game isn't canon, but Sonic 4 is. Think about that for a little bit. People have better access to Sonic 4 than they have to this. Which would you rather play? Oh yeah, the Sega Sonic arcade game as well, which... Again, from what I've heard from at least fan discussions, is supposedly a prequel to the first game on Mega Drive slash Game Gear Master System. And yet, you can't play it outside of emulation, which... Oh, and Shadow the Hedgehog too, I mean... I can at least understand to a degree why that one isn't the most accessible, considering it's not exactly a game that I would be proud of, but... Considering how pivotal it is to the story of the series, considering it's basically the... I would say it was the last game where really any particular world building happens, but Unleashed also occurred as well, so take that as you will. That's another one which never got ported, so I guess Chip no longer is canon under those sort of under that sort of mindset, which I know is kind of cruel, but I'm just more sort of thinking in terms of newcomers to the series who got into it via stuff like Prime, the movies, watching episodes of Sonic X on YouTube, which... I never really thought I'd see the day where, you know... Back in like 2008, I never thought I'd see the day where almost the entire series was just up on YouTube to see for free with ads. I mean, at the very least, seeing this game on Steam would probably help the modding scene. I know a guy who, is sort of big into shadow modding, and, well, Sonic game modding in general. Right now he's working on, ironically enough, a mod for Heroes, which I'll probably do a little bonus stream on once it becomes available. Oh, hello, game? Well, this is kind of awkward, isn't it? I'm just basically stuck here, and so just... Yeah. Pinball, am I right? You can definitely tell... I can definitely see why these aren't exactly the most well-loved levels in this game. Considering how the team swapping works, I probably shouldn't have fallen for that in all honesty, but alas... So from what I've seen with games which are accessible on Steam, which has the biggest repository of games compared to, say, the Switch, which has even less games, you have Sonic Origins, which has the original trilogy in CD and all the Game Gear games, weirdly enough. It's like... people have better access to Sonic Blast than they do Sonic Heroes. Or Sonic Adventure 2 in that instance, because, well, you do have the ports from Xbox Live and PlayStation Plus all the way back in the PS3 days and Xbox Live days. 360 days, even. We still haven't gotten, as of yet, adventure ports for the Switch, which... I'm just gonna say it. Ever since I was a youngin, Sonic games have generally performed well on Nintendo hardware, like... That's another one as well, Secret Rings and Black Knight, which you can only realistically play nowadays via emulation if you don't happen to have, like, a Wii or a Wii U. Granted, you probably wouldn't want to play Secret Rings, but it's still something to consider. Just all these Sonic games, especially from the 2000s, have have so little access, despite arguably being some of the highlights of this series, depending on who you ask. Alright, I want to see if I can actually get the switch here to get to the VIP table, because we haven't seen the VIP table yet. I know, at the very least, here in Team Dark's version, it's harder to get to than Team Sonic's, which is just in the middle there. I can't remember if it's actually on this higher table. I'd expect it to be. Alright, I think it's on another part of the table. Let me just come down from here. And stop that infernal noise! Thank you. What? Sonic Heroes, everybody! I have never seen that happen before on the stage. Never before have I seen just any of the characters just fly off the pinball table like that. Hello Ken Brian, we were just messing about with pinball tables. I should probably get off this thing at some point. You know, if the game will let me. In your own time, game. This isn't Team Chaotix, I don't have to abide by the rules of getting 200 rings. Please, get me off Mr. Bones' wild ride already. Okay, there's the switch in order to get the VIP table. Can we actually access it, though? Let me... Nope. Never mind. It's kind of a shame, but, again, we can't stay here all day. There's so much stuff on stream that's happened which I've never ever experienced before, like the Egg Genesis just rocketing off into space back in 06. I've never seen that happen before, and frankly it was amazing. I'm glad that it's survived. I'm glad that I got it on stream. That's... I want to try doing that again at some point. Anyways, yeah, VIP table, get a whole bunch of rings there. It's kind of a shame that I never got to access it this time around. It's easier to do with the Chaotix for obvious reasons, because of course SPO can bypass the laser gate in order to get it to it. Alright, let's get off Mr. Bones' wild ride. I'll be honest, despite how annoying it can be, I never really had a problem with this level, mostly because I like to look at it, especially these palm trees. It just... Even though they're fake, I generally think they look nice. This whole level looks nice, I'd say, despite its age. Yeah, not doing the best in terms of times right now. I know Team Dark levels tend to be the longest, but I feel I probably need to step it up a little bit. We're already an hour in. Alright, there's bingo on the table again. Yeah, me thinks this is probably going to be the longest of the hero streams. I mean, aside from maybe the next one, which I plan to do Team Rose and Last Story simultaneously, since Team Rose is the shortest one. And I figured, you know, Last Story is probably too short to dedicate an entire stream to, so may as well do both at the same time. Hopefully we'll see some more fun moments there as well. Shadow! I keep forgetting you're not supposed to switch in this level. And that's another thing which I feel... Are they going to say bingo on the table? No, they didn't say bingo on the table. That's a shame. I don't know why, I just find that just a humorous line. May just be the delivery of it, in all honesty. There's bingo on the table! I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever actually gotten a full bingo set in this level, ever. And I know it's definitely possible, but... Again, I'd rather just get all the levels over with at this point. Can you please let me up? Just thinking in terms of games which a few more games which I want to stream, because I'll be honest, in terms of the Pokemon streams that I've been doing recently, some stuff which has happened which has dissuaded me from going through with them, which I'll probably explain next stream. Well, tomorrow's stream, more specific. How you dare snipe me! In terms of Sonic games, I feel as though I definitely want to go more towards some of the quote Dark Age games. Like, at one point I want to see if I can dust off my Wii U and make sure it still works, and do some of the Wii games, like the one which is coming to mind right now is one game which I surprisingly enjoyed, which was Mario and Sonic Olympic Games 2010. Admittedly, I didn't particularly enjoy the Beijing 2008 one, but I think mostly because they were a bit more lax on the motion controls compared to the first one. I found the 2010 one more enjoyable, especially the Dream events, which got a whole lot more creative, I'd say. Like, I can particularly remember back in the day when first seeing gameplay of the game and really getting excited about Dream figure skating, mostly because, you know, Perfect Chaos returns and got an ice makeover and you use the Chaos Emeralds to quote-unquote fight him. I just remember that seeming so cool back in the day. I mean, obviously it's fairly tame. Okay, I guess we're starting all over again in that case. I'm sure it seems fairly tame now, but back then, when a lot of the nostalgia stuff really hadn't set in, the nostalgia rot hadn't set in just yet, seeing Perfect Chaos again for the first time since Adventure 1 really was a sight to behold. Got real excited about that one back in the day. And oh yeah, there was another weird one as well. One of the events from Winter Olympic Games, Dream Bobsledding. That's, I'm pretty sure par for the course. I'm fairly certain it will start up again soon. If not, then that's fine. Just glad to see some activity in the chat. Yeah, I think we could just do this. Get used to seeing this, by the way. But yeah, a weird one going back to at least looking back at some of the events, was the Dream Bobsledding one, which takes place on Nocturnus from Sonic Chronicles. The one Sonic game which cannot be canon for legal reasons. And just seeing that in another game, it's just so weird. I mean, it's technically just the beginning and the end of the level, because the rest of it is just the hero special stages, except good. And that they actually control good. But again, just Generally seeing anything Sonic Chronicles now is just so weird to see, considering everything that happened with it. Actually, that's if I can get, somehow get, streaming DS games to work. I do want to stream Chronicles at some point, because that is definitely an oddity, to say the least. I haven't really heard much about some Chronicles aside from all the lawsuit stuff with Penders, which, you know, getting a little bit more context on... Oh, there we go again. Yeah, getting a bit more context as to what happened with Penders and Archie. It's not exactly a black and white thing where Penders is just this source of evil in the series, which is why we don't have good writing anymore, which... I mean, it isn't the case, because, well... there was a little bit more nuance in that. Obviously, Penders had, a rather, well, unorthodox amount of creative control. And had, to say the least, a few interesting ideas. Oh, hey, I actually got it. Now we can skip that last annoying pinball table and just go straight to the exits. Yeah, I'm not entirely certain whether the aerial control there is good enough to actually get all the stuff. I'm pretty sure you can if you're in fly formation. Maybe, perhaps? Question mark. I'm certain it's possible. I brought up the whole Olympic Games thing because I'm fairly certain Bingo Highway is host to another one of the Dream events, that being Dream Sprint, where you basically play Super Monkey Ball. Or at least are in, like, while you're sprinting along, you're in characters in balls like in Super Monkey Ball. I'm pretty sure that was actually Olympic Games 2012, though. It's kind of weird I never actually picked that one up, considering the actual improvements Winter Olympics 2010 was. It's kind of weird, though, because you'd think by now we'd be hearing a fair bit of stuff about Mario and Sonic Olympic Games 2024, yet there's been nothing so far, so... I can't help but wonder whether or not the Olympic Games thing is just over now after the 2021 fell through. I mean, obviously we didn't get an Olympic game, a Winter Olympics 2022, which, again is a shame, but... in fact, all of it is a shame. Like, the first game definitely started off with a bit of a bad impression with how, exhausting its control scheme was, especially with stuff like the sprint. But I'd definitely say it improved after a fair bit, though. I can't help but wonder if that's, the Olympic Games thing is sort of to do with the fall of motion controls, per se, as they're really just sort of a gimmick on the Switch as compared to its sort of big selling thing. And yeah, there's still motion controls on the Switch, but you don't really use them as much. Like, I know you could technically use them in, like, Mario Odyssey for certain attacks, and in certain puzzles you'd need to do gyroscopic stuff, but I think generally speaking motion controls have sort of been phased out as yet another fad, from what I could tell. Oh great, I'm stuck as Rouge. I will admit I wasn't expecting those rings to do as much damage as they did. It was sort of a weird thing, because I would have been led to assume that, in terms of flying type characters, Tails and Rouge are sort of the worst ones, because of course, you can't tell the difference between normal rings and dummy rings, but I think at the very least in terms of combat prowess and damage output, I think they might actually be the best, mostly because Charmy's attack is short range and Cream's attack comes out way too slow. I mean, hopefully we'll get to see an example of Cream and Cheese actually doing stuff in Heroes, because... well, they said the thing in Dream Team. I kind of have to showcase it off at some point if I can, which... is a shame, because, again, it comes out really slowly, and to the point where I've very rarely actually seen it in action. Was that all of them? Fairly certain that was all of them. Come on, Eggman. Up. There we go. I will admit, at least the Robot Carnival iteration, I actually kind of find it enjoyable. Mostly just, I guess that pays credence to how the combat is quote-unquote good. As I will admit, a lot of the stuff in this game feels like a solution to a problem which arguably shouldn't have existed, but for what it's worth, I feel as though, in terms of combat, even though it arguably slows a lot of levels down to a crawl, especially with Team Dark, it is at the very least somewhat you dare snipe me again. Oh wait, this is also where Team Chaotic starts off, isn't it? Might be wrong. Yeah, I think that was also Team Chaotic's start point, which I completely forgot about. I'll probably have to check back on Team Sonic's version of the level as well, though, just to make absolutely sure. I will admit I'm not entirely... I gotta question what exactly the point of a lot of these rails are, how they're being held up. This is one of those things, really, where you start to notice things which you just sort of take for granted as a kid, like the fact that there's nothing holding any of these rails up, they're just sort of spiraling up in the sky. Along with just all these floating platforms. Right. Alright, off to a good start. We're only halfway through as well. Alright, excuse me, pardon me. I know I've already squandered my chance of an A rank, so let's just try and get through this as quickly as we can. Let me just get Rouge for this, just to make absolutely sure. There we go. Now hopefully we won't come off the rails again this time. There we go. Alright, and I think this is the only time we actually go up on the roof this time. I know who did it with at least one team, and this is it. I do at the very least appreciate that about this game, the fact that they're willing to change up level sets to make each playthrough at least somewhat unique. Right, I couldn't remember whether or not there was actually a train which came down this road, just like there was back in Team Sonic's run. It doesn't seem like it, which I wouldn't have personally expected given this is hard mode. Maybe it's probably just a thing in super hard mode. I will admit, that hasn't exactly been something which I've actually played before, mostly just because I can never bring myself to 100% in this game. Obviously, it's a bit more manageable compared to, say, 100%ing Shadow, because, again, 300 endings. For whatever reason, I could just never bring myself to actually getting around to it, mostly. Not certain whether or not I didn't find most of the level designs, mission designs all that fun compared to the levels, or just whether or not I was just more focused on other games, but the weird thing is I kept replaying a lot of levels from this game just normally, like Frog Forest, this, Grand Metropolis, just generally a lot of the, arguably, I'd say more fun levels, like Hang Castle. Just want to make absolutely sure I don't fall to my death here. There we go. They're pouring out all the tricks. Yeah, you just skip that. I will admit I was a little bit worried about doing this playthrough in particular, mostly just because I remembered how long this could get and how exhausting it would probably have been as a result. Like, I still basically have war flashbacks to the Team Dark version of Final Fortress. So needless to say, not exactly looking forward to that. Also standing around here waiting for time to stop, not exactly the most fun prospect. I will admit, one thing which I do kind of miss, I do honestly quite like this team's dynamic, at least from what I've seen in, well, this and sort of, especially fan content. I feel that sort of helped flesh out Team Dark a fair bit more. And in 06 as well, weirdly enough. Just... I mean, I say that, but thinking about it, I feel as though a lot of the Team Dark chemistry really does come from fan work, with admittedly not having the most stuff to really work off of in this game with regards to team chemistry. It feels more like just sort of free individuals rather than just the family unit Team Sonic was, if that makes any sense. Like, obviously they got all their own interests separate from one another. There we go, I actually got on the roof this time, and we can just go all the way down here to the end. I knew I'd get that eventually. That was one of the shorter ones. I remember Bullet Station with Team Dark also being fairly rough, so we'll just see how we fare with that. Still, this place looks pretty cool though, even despite its fairly rough encounters. And whatever level design this is, yeah, whatever level design this is. I may have mentioned previously that this game might have been a bit of a downfall for Shadow, which, I mean, obviously the whole amnesia thing, I get why it was ultimately Maikawa's decision, who was basically Shadow's dad, or more specifically, Shadow was Maikawa's baby, so I can understand why he did. It's like, oh, it's a thing which sort of detaches him from the lore, from his pre-established lore, which were, I think, was at the time he'd sort of been done with at that point. Basically, allowing the characters to have a bit more of a fresh start, and add a little bit more mystique back into it for future stories, which was handled debatably, or should I say divisively, back in Shadow the Hedgehog. Where they took what I felt could have been a rather introspective game on Shadow's nature as a this sort of immortal godlike being. I say godlike, but it is basically stated flat out at the end of Shadow the Hedgehog, at least in the Japanese version, that Shadow is basically immortal. So you could have had stuff dealing with that, but instead Izuka liked Underworld, and he wanted to put that into a game. He saw people like Ratchet and Clank and just thought people might like it if he put that in the game. Basically what I'm saying is that Shadow the Hedgehog was probably the most overt example of trend chasing up to that point. Or I should say the first most overt example of that. I don't look forward, admittedly, to playing Shadow the Hedgehog on stream, but I feel it's definitely going to be an interesting experience just to try and reassess the character there. You know, to the best of my bunny brained ability, which, granted, isn't exactly the most critically thinking or quick. Alright, now here's where things get a little bit ugly, especially with these Rhino bots. See? Immediately sniped. In your own time, there we go. This is probably going to be a mistake trying to tail behind this one, but fairly certain it'll be destroyed before he... Never mind. Never mind, caught up to it and got punished for it anyway. I imagine this must be a nightmare on super hard. Yeah, I get the whole super hard, the more harder aspect to it, but honestly my main problem with the Team Dark levels is just how long they were. Especially like Final Fortress, which goes on for like 15 minutes, not including time stops. I think it might just have something to do with players these days being less accepting of jank. Like, obviously there's a lot of jank in, you know, this, Adventure 1, Adventure 2, Shadow, 06, and for the most part, I think a lot of us back then, as kids at the very least, could have looked past that. I mean, I say a lot of people could are less accepting of jank, but then again, Cyberpunk. I was able to make it through just fine without any major problems. Just mostly a lot of jank. I mean, if you say so. So far, admittedly, I feel as though I'm a bit more of a Chaotix fan myself at this point. I mean, Shadow definitely is still a likable character to me, with his history, and I feel watching Project Shadow especially helped to sort of remind me of that, why people like Shadow. So far, at the very least, I find Team Chaotix a bit more relatable. Especially Vector. I mean, can you really blame him? Vector going after being in a relationship with arguably the best girl in the series? I know that's probably going to be a bit of a heated statement, but that's where I fall on that particular subject. It's yeah, for the longest time I had no idea you could actually destroy those black slaps. Anyways, here's where it gets particularly rough. I remember that at the very least. Like this train segment and the bobsleigh segment, this... I remember getting thrown back to the checkpoint here quite often. Especially as Team Doc, so bear with me. Just sort of, admittedly, I just sort of remembered, once again, I think a lot of the love for Team Doc might also stem from Archie, particularly, Preboot. There's one thing I particularly remember about Preboot at the very least was Omega's crush on Blaze. I remember finding that particularly funny. What do you mean? I don't need speed formation for that part. Alright, time for some more bottom gear. Tonight on bottom gear, Omega downloads Bonzi Body. Rouge jumps in the air. And Shadow falls to his doom again. We're certainly doing better than I'm used to at this particular point. Alright, come on. When is the laser? There's the laser. Just gonna jump. I always got stuck on that part as a kid. I always found that particular bobsleigh segment to be so difficult, and yet here, no problem at all, not even one hit. Just get that, and we should be fine for the rest of it. I mean, Team Chaotix is basically where the story actually happens in this game, and I always found it weird in this particular iteration of the level. There's just a switch tied to these crates. How does that work? Yeah, we're about to get into the more interesting parts of basically the big mystery box of Team Dog's story in a bit. There we go. Oh yeah, that's still pretty cool. And why are there just a whole bunch of robots over here? Okay, I think I know why. Pretty sure, at the very least in like the GameCube version, I remember all these robots basically just hanging around the goal. There's one. There they all are. They just sort of spawned incorrectly for some reason. Good old PC version. Yeah. Thinking about the whole Dog Story, Team Dog Story thing feels like it's really just the the Shadow show, in all honesty. It's like Rouge and Omega are just sort of here. Though you could also argue the same about Team Rose, which is basically the Amy Rose show. I'll be honest, my history of this game has mostly just been the GameCube version, which, from what I remember, had the least amount of jank, though I haven't played the Xbox version. I've mostly just heard stuff about the PC version and the PS2 version, which are definitely not recommended plays from what I recall. I think I could just jump over. Yeah, I can just jump over those robots and just. I guess you could say that. I just wish we got a little bit more stuff for, say, Rouge, who I feel hasn't really had much of a character arc or really much character story in general since Adventure 2, where even then her arc wasn't exactly the most clear. At the end of Adventure 2, it was made to assume that Rouge was going to quit treasure hunting, and yet she never did. Instead, I think they just sort of led to assume that meant she was quitting her role as a gun agent, which, again, never had technically happened. I think I'm about to, well, let me just get to some land here. I'd rather not fall to my doom. Yeah, Omega really is one of the, real losers here, because again, outside the fact that he's just mad at Eggman and wants to destroy him just because he locked him in a broom closet for an undisclosed amount of time. It feels like, especially compared to Gamma, it's a real step down in terms of storytelling. Like, I'd go on to say that Gamma is probably one of the best stories in the series. Just how emotionally resonant it is. Just, you have this one side character who goes on this epic quest to save his friends and dies at the end, and yet nobody knows him, nobody remembers him. I don't think Amy ever actually mentions Gamma ever again, aside from maybe Sonic Battle, which doesn't really count. Metal Sonic good story? I might have to disagree on that. It's more so, he got a good moment to shine in this game, and from there basically just turned to Eggman's favorite jobber. Oh, here we go. Here's the big twist. Now, for some reason, Eggman is creating robotic Shadow duplicates. What does this mean for Shadow? Is he an android too? I used to think that was good I used to think that was acceptable delivery of a line. Yep, the eponymous android of this game. It really is a shame that they never really did much with the whole Shadow Android thing either. That could have definitely been its own interesting thing. Like, maybe after this game, Neo Metal could have gone off, made his own, like, faction of the Eggman Empire, full of, like, Shadow Androids, and maybe even, like, other versions of Metal Sonic. Like, you could have had, like, mass-produced Mecha Sonics. Basically, what I'm saying is I'd really want to see in this series its own Brotherhood of Metallics, which, from what I've heard, is something the writer of that particular arc in Fleetway was okay with, but it's something that I don't think they're actually going to do, which is a shame. I really should read more Fleetway at some point, because it definitely has a lot of cool concepts. Like, again, a lot of the lore behind Mecha Sonic, and obviously Supersonic is kind of infamous in that series. And generally speaking, there's a lot of stuff in there which I've also remember reading from a fair few of the old Sonic books from the 90s, like I have Castle Robotnik as one of them. I think Silicon Warriors was another one people were a big fan of. Castle Robotnik is basically just Sonic and Tails going for this very horror-themed thing where at the end Sonic faces a duplicate version of himself, which is basically Frankensonic. I should probably read through that again. I remember it being quite goofy at points. Like, I remember at some point Sonic gets hit with some sort of ray thing that makes him, like, brain dead, basically, and Tails has to save him. I remember especially there was basically different versions of Sonic's friends, which were all like made into versions of classic horror villains, like for example Porker Lewis, who was also a major character in the Fleetway comics, had a duplicate version which was basically Dracula. Sally Acorn was the Mummy. I'm sure there was a fair few which I'm also missing. It's I'm wondering if I should read that on stream, actually. That would be a fun little stream to do. Like, I know Fleetway exists, but I'm fairly certain I was born and got into the series basically after it was cancelled, so needless to say, never really had much of an opportunity to get into it. Honestly, now I do kind of want to read Castle Robotnik on stream. That would ought to be a laugh. Though I feel for something like that I'd probably need some sort of picture accompaniment, and I'm basically have... I will admit, in terms of streaming, I still am very much a novice, as you can probably tell with how scuffed it often is. So I'll probably put the whole reading Castle Robotnik thing on hold for maybe once I've actually gotten better at streaming, which I feel at this point I really have to really start thinking about. Because it's been like a year. Yeah. Again, it's so weird, just seeing the scale of these levels is just crazy. Like, especially, like, going to Frontiers and thinking that's big, and then you come back to levels like this, and Rail Canyon, and Hang Castle, and these levels just feel huge. And it's also probably, goes on to explain why they're also so long, but still. I think, just the sheer scale of it is probably why this was arguably my favorite level to go back to back in the day. Because it's generally just... Well, you could argue it's a filler level, it's generally, in my opinion, the most fun. Just a lot of the encounters, just the level design, the gimmicks, it's all just generally a nice, calm, fun time, especially with the music. Right, for this one I have to remember to actually pick up a key, because somehow I forgot it during my run with both Team Sonic and Chaotix, though. I think you can... I think you can justify it with Team Chaotix, mostly... justify it with Team Sonic, rather. Because it is fairly easy to take damage in Lost Jungle. This is gonna be rough. At least we can get some practice in here. Oh dear, it crashed. Okay. Okay, I just got to exit out of that. And we'll just have to go again. Sorry about that, definitely not something that I was expecting. At least this way we actually get to skip the special stage, so... Swings und Roundabouts. I mean, hopefully it's saved so we're just at Lost Jungle. I don't think we want to go through Frog Forest again, even though it was pleasant to go through. There we go, Lost Jungle. Particularly my least favorite level in the game. Just, I never really liked a lot of the encounters here. Generally quite emblematic of the stop-start nature of the worst aspects of the level design as well, especially with these guys. The game really likes to get into really throwing egg hammers at you after this point. I think that's also generally why I'm not the biggest fan of Mystic Mansion either, just because of how much health these guys have. Just look at that. Redonkulous amount of health. I'm just thinking, you could probably actually get through that by using Chaos Inferno. Fairly interesting tech there. Let me just grab this key. I'm gonna need this. Fantastic. Now I'm gonna have to find another key. I mean, at the very least, if I don't get it here, I probably will just get it off stream, so I don't have to worry about it as much. I'll probably try to get it on Team Rose stream as well, just to say I got it. But yeah, I'd rather not get held up trying to make things even longer than they already are. Because of the Pokemon streams I've been doing have taught me anything, I don't like wasting time. You know, it's kind of weird. I never really considered much about the verticality of these levels. Like, obviously the bottomless pits are definitely an issue. Something which I feel the series has come to rely a bit too much on. Very nearly caught me out there, didn't you? Alright, let me just get these ones out of the way. I should really use this more often. What do you mean sensing something, Shadow? I will admit that does sort of remind me of some sort of all the various old fan headcanons back in the day. Yeah, all the various fan headcanons back in the day before 06. Basically, with regards to Shadow having some form of telekinesis, which, again, obviously a callback to Mewtwo, which has the same powers, but seems weird that didn't seem to be sort of a thing that was unique to me. It's something I always really imagined him doing as a kid, but it was never exactly something up. Apparently he died there again. Okay. Well, we can just bypass that whole segment, I suppose. I just gotta look around here. Any keys? Any keys for me? What is going on here? What is... You'd think the black frogs would be a bit more active, but for some reason they're just not. Okay, I guess we're just gonna have to and actually get the... No, I don't think I can. I don't think that you can do the gain Team Blast Gauge real quick glitch in the PC version. Instead, you just gotta have to do it normally. I remember this being particularly easy to do on the GameCube version. It's also weird as well, thinking back to Fleetway. I know that there was sort of a fan continuity of the series, but I haven't really heard that much about it. I know that it basically covered Adventure 2, the events of Adventure 2, or at least its own version of it, where instead of the arc, it was basically Eggman had his own, like, flying fortress, I think, and a supersonic... Sonic very nearly killed Shadow, I think? It's been a while. I can't exactly remember the full details. I just mostly remember at the end Shadow sacrificing himself to save Eggman from his crashing ship. Presumably after Supersonic wrecked the place, as he always does. I just gotta play extra careful around here. I got my key. Just gotta make sure I don't take any more damage, which is easier said than done. I can really do with a shield right now. Yeah, I'm not gonna waste any time with you. Just realized I could have very easily skipped this guy. Oh well. Still very easily remedied, as you can see. Just, I always thought that was a weird design decision, just having a black frog there, only to have a green frog to reverse his effects almost immediately. I could see that being a bit more of a puzzle aspect, but again, just having them right next to each other, it's kind of strange. Anyways, here we are with, the ending segment. Always dreaded this part as a kid, as I previously stated. 3-1 up though, I'll easily take that. Just sworn I was dead there again. Come on. Fairly certain I didn't need to attack that one, but I did anyway. Still would have found it hilarious had Vector actually encountered this particular alligator, though. Oh, excuse me! Well, guess I'm just gonna have to get the 5th emerald in my own time. I'll probably use Team Chaotix in order to get it, though, to be honest. That level was particularly short. Alright, let's try to do this again. Hopefully the swings don't mess up this time. I swear, I've never had that happen to me in the GameCube version. The swings in the GameCube version, for the most part, have worked absolutely fine, but... Again, I guess I'm just gonna have to go without a key this time. And of course we have black frogs to accompany us. Oh boy. Yep. Done in by something that wasn't even my fault. At least I'm fairly certain. Let's, may as well relieve a little bit of frustration on Sonic's face with fists. Rouge's eyeshadow really does look like it's made of plastic, doesn't it? Then again, the whole cast does. I'm just thinking her eyeshadow in particular just looks so plasticky. Alright, I know how this works, I know how these fights go. I know you're gonna soft lock me on the first time around, so I'm not taking any chances this time. It's been nice knowing you, Sonic. Defend yourself! Come on. Away with you. After what I just went through, Sonic, probably. Now go proudly. You've already cost me the A rank, just go. Don't do this to me again, Sonic. Please. Just go. I love your theme and all, but you really need to go now. Yeah, I'm just gonna restart. Go on. Away with you. Goodbye. It's been nice knowing you, Sonic, but I'm in a bit of a hurry now, so goodbye. 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 Get going. You've overstayed your welcome. This again, right? I'd rather not stay on this for longer than I need to, Sonic, so you're gonna need to go. Well, look at that, Sonic's gone already. Alright, Knuckles, you need to go too. Go on, just go proudly. There you go. Alright, Tails. Don't you throw that dummy ring... There we go. Meant to do that face, sorry. Yeah, already missed the A rank again. Kind of weird that he doesn't mention the shadow android he ran into earlier, the robot duplicate. It really feels like there is some intrigue here, but it doesn't really have the time in order to really flesh it out too much. I guess mostly because Frog Forest doesn't have any cutscenes. Which would probably help... Let's do that again. I suppose it would probably help with helping characters digest their thoughts a little bit, because otherwise... I guess you could technically argue that the cutscene after Egg Albatross is the Frog Forest cutscene, but... Again, between there and Hand Castle, it feels as though the plot hasn't really had much time to really sink in or develop. Because right now it feels like we've got just the bare bones of stuff going on. You dare. I'll just say, I am definitely looking forward to playing the Team Rose versions of these levels, mostly just how, mostly just to be able to experience the truncated versions, because fairly certain by now we've seen all we need to see of these particular, levels. Still seems weird that the massive Dragon Ball lasers Omega shoots out can't break wooden boxes. But I suppose getting back to Metal Sonic as a villain, generally speaking, I think I might have mentioned this prior, but I really feel as though this series really needs more recurring villains, because obviously the series has had more villains than just Eggman, but all the good ones have been one-offs, like Eraser Jin and Merlina especially come to mind. Even Metal Sonic in this game, Neo Metal, after this he basically doesn't come back unless you really want to count IDW, which I'll be honest, I never really did, again because I figured that it was going to end up... From what I've seen of IDW, especially recently, it feels like a comic which knows it's on borrowed time. It's a comic which knows that it could be cancelled any minute, and... Well, here we go again. Yeah, IDW feels like a comic which knows that it's going to get cancelled at any point, so... It just sort of spends its time throwing in stuff which fans, quote-unquote, want to see without really doing much to develop it. Like, I think the best example of this would be the whole Whisper and Tangle hooking up thing, which I don't really mind, you know. In the comic it seemed like they had a fairly decent chemistry at the very least, and I don't really have an issue with it considering it's, you know, original characters who aren't really treading over the toes of the established characters like we've seen in so many other franchises. The main issue with it, and I think with a lot of people, even though they might not know it, is just... It kind of feels rushed. Like, Whisper and Tangle have only had really any sort of proper interactions in their miniseries. They didn't really get much in terms of Metal Virus aside from that one. Aside from when Tangle got infected with Metal Virus, in which part, yeah, Whisper did kind of go off the handle, but aside from that, we really didn't get much. Like, even after the whole Tango wanting to name their team after the Diamond Cutters, basically naming them in, I guess, in honor of Whisper's dead friends, which naturally she didn't really take kindly to. I never really got any indication of, you know, actually getting together. It's the sort of thing you'd really expect like 10 years ago with, like, Legend of Korra, from what I've really seen of it. There could be a little bit more to it, but again, I haven't really seen all that much of IDW for... Like, to start off with, it seemed like a fairly cool thing, but I felt as though I'd never really had the time to really get into the comics, and now, seeing how IDW has been doing, it doesn't really feel like there's much point in actually getting into it because of the, odds of it likely disappearing within a year. Honestly, I'm surprised it's lasted until this year and all, actually, but... Again, it feels like it could easily change. Hopefully it doesn't, but... Let's just say I wouldn't be surprised if, within the following year, IDW Sonic does end up getting cancelled, or... You know, something happens where it's under a different publisher, maybe IDW gets bought out, and maybe they end up just going bankrupt and just disappearing. Who knows at this point? Welcome back. We're just starting to get near the end now. This has admittedly gone on longer than I actually know. Considering it's Team Dark, it does sort of seem on brand that it would be taking this long, and I completely forgot the torches were affected by the time stop. I very nearly just walked to my death there. Because from what I remember, a lot of the Team Dark missions, especially in the later half, do get quite rough. Like, I remember in Final Fortress as the sort of main example. I think Mystic Mansion might also be an example of that as well, with how rough it can get. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, which seems like it won't be all that long. Because I can just do this. Thankfully, I don't think there's much in terms of the rest of this level which is affected by time stop, so I think, for now, we should be fine. For some reason I always feel tempted to just go to Y formation for crossing that. Alright, goodbye. And now we get to see the power of fly formation in this segment in its true form. We basically go till the end of Team Dark's story, which, at the rate we're going, probably another half hour. Maybe a little less than that. Hopefully a little less than that. Keep remembering I can just do that. Ah yes, the foreshadowing statue again. I will say though, it is definitely harder to tell the bottom half of the statue from this particular lighting. I guess that's a neat little trick I kind of appreciate about this level as well, how it handles lighting for both the... for the upside down wall, because it does definitely get a lot darker, I'd say. Or at the very least, it's a lot easier to see the obvious foreshadowing on display here. Get it? Because it's a statue of Eggman, but when you flip it over, you find out it's actually Metal Sonic, but... it's like it's the actual plot of the game, where Eggman in this game is actually Metal Sonic. Yay! I think it's sort of obvious at this point, considering we've seen Neo Metal running around, and... in the Chaotic story, we found Eggman at the end just locked in a broom closet. Still think this is one of my favorite set pieces in the whole game, though. Just the whole running up this upside-down tower thing. It's just... again, a great indication of scale. This whole castle place just looks so big. How did you not notice that? I'm sorry, it's just... it seemed like the most obvious thing when I had it... yeah, this is a little tidbit which I always thought was weird. We just have this little extended part at the end of Team Dark's version of Hang Castle, which for some reason, despite it leading into this doorway here, which would obviously be a good entry point for Mystic Mansion, for some reason Team Sonic never goes through it, which I always thought was kind of odd, especially with the lighting in there. It seemed like it would be the perfect segue into Mystic Mansion, yet Team Dark are the only ones who go through it. No idea how I managed an A on that level. Okay, here's where the pain starts. And immediately we start off with an egg hammer. Get used to fighting these fellas, because I think we're going to be fighting a fair few of them in this level. Oh boy. Can you tell I'm getting fatigued already? Alright, just camera up. Thank you. Wait, is that chandelier actually... that chandelier isn't being held up by anything. And I guess you could say, you know, Spooky Mansion held up by ghosty things, but that's the first time I've noticed that. The chandelier not being held up by anything. One thing I've also noticed which is weird about these egg pawns is that they have these shoulder-mounted guns, and given, you know, you'd think them to basically be rocket launchers like they are in Shadow the Hedgehog. You expect them to do some sort of AoE damage, yet they don't, which I always thought was kind of odd. Get rid of those. Because I've played this before, Brian, I know how rough these last few levels can get. Well, I just noticed they spawn with their shields above them. Yeah, I'd recommend it. Might also appreciate some of the lore implications they tried to go for, which the later games might have forgotten. Like the fact that, especially in one of the old strategy guides for Shadow the Hedgehog, Adventure 2, in Japanese, sort of implied that the shadow we see in Adventure 2 isn't the same shadow which was on the Ark 50 years ago. It was implied that... well, it was stated that the pod that was jettisoned from the Ark was never recovered, so it's sort of implied, especially with some of the dialogue from Gerald's memoirs at the end of Adventure 2, that the shadow which was in Adventure 2 was a duplicate which Gerald made on Prison Island while he was incarcerated. Basically a replica which was programmed with Shadow's memories and, well, more specifically just his memories of his time with Maria and the trauma that ensued from Maria's death, basically. Which, actually thinking about it, it would probably make sense that the Shadow from the arc was the same one from Adventure 2, because that would sort of bring up the question of how exactly Joe was able to get a hold of Shadow's memories. Unless the whole thing with Maria being gunned down by Gunn was fake all along, which was admittedly a neat little thing, which, headcanon thing, which I thought of in a more recent playthrough of Shadow the Hedgehog, more specifically Lost Impact. The idea that the whole gun raid never actually happened in the first place, and Maria's death was literally just an accident during an outbreak of all the artificial chaos. Maria was just badly injured in the chaos, and likely knowing, admittedly drawing straws here, likely knowing that Shadow would likely take the fall for it and be incarcerated as well due to the whole link with the Perfect Chaos project, would have likely been shut down as well, so Maria likely just, whether it be for selfish reasons or selfless, I'd say selfish reasons, arguably because it makes it more interesting. There, you see, I did it! You can actually knock off the you can knock their heads off with the tornado. I knew you could do it. The game just gaslighted me into thinking you couldn't. And now he's just sort of stuck in place. I knew you could do it. I knew I wasn't crazy. Anyways, yeah, that's a particular detail which I feel might have been missing. Obviously, there's a fair bit of jiggery-pokery you have to do with the plot in order to make it work 100%, so I admit it's not exactly as big of a trying to figure the word. It's, how could I not figure the word? I use it all the time at work. Whatever. Basically, it's not as big as a issue compared to people forgetting the end of Sonic Adventure, per se, for example. That may have been my internet, admittedly. It's not... Historically, it's not exactly been the best. It's sort of why I end up streaming at 720 as opposed to 1080, because it seems as though my internet as is can't exactly handle streaming at 1080, which, again, is a shame, but it seems 720 seems to work, so that's what I'm going with. And that, I think, was the last instance of the bobsled in the entire game. It was fun while it lasted. Also seems weird that Team Dark are the only ones that actually, aside from Team Chaotix, actually deal with these torches. It's like a fixture which you expect to see come up a little bit more, yet Team Dark and Team Chaotic are the only ones who actually make use of them. Admittedly, though, this definitely hasn't been as bad as I was expecting. I think my main issue is just how long it can be. So far, it's not exactly been as long as some of the other levels, so maybe my misgivings of it were unjustified. We'll see once we actually get down here, because I know that the altars of the very least are significantly different, and there's a whole bunch of just ghosts down here. Let me just see if I can do anything about that. Probably not. Let's just hope that I don't take too... Oh, never mind, they're all gone. Okay. Still think this weird dimension effect looks better in the GameCube version. I don't need speed formation for this part. What are you talking about? What is up with me just weirdly, just gently teleporting one foot to the left or the right? I'm gonna save the Team Blast for the Power one for obvious reasons. That was more sort of a happy little accident, I'm afraid, Brian. Don't worry too much about it. I did it. It doesn't seem to be lagging too badly on my end. Try, That's what I'm talking about with Omega being the worst power type character. That right there. Anyways, yeah, try refreshing the stream if you're struggling. I mean, stream seems to be working fine on my end. You very nearly caught me there. Alright, let's just go down here. Worst part about this is now I have to do all that combat again without power cores. Thank you very much, camera. Thank you very much, camera. There we go. There we go. Alright, I probably have to do lore at some point, don't I? The story I have so far is basically just... You know, try to do some advanced ninjutsu techniques. May have gotten a few of the hand signs slightly wrong, and ended up just keeping them as a punishment for messing with things I probably wasn't supposed to. I'll tell you when you're older. Let's just go with that. I'll tell you when you're older. Ask your parents, or actually probably don't. Yeah, needless to say, I think I prefer the Team Sonic version of this level, mostly just because you don't have to worry about combat on very small platforms. At the very least, we have the Team Blast, so we can just get the last one out of the way real quick. Don't even have to switch the power character for this. I realize it's not even one of the helmeted egg hammers, it's just a normal one. Okay. Not in front of the kids, I'll probably make a proper explanation for it eventually. You know, once I actually figure out what I'm actually gonna do with the channel, because I feel there's gonna come a point where I can't just keep streaming games. I do want to try making videos, but then again, that's involves actually learning how to edit, and I never really learned that when I was growing up, so it's going to be a whole new experience, as well as actually getting used to my voice as usual, so... Thank you for sticking around regardless. It's definitely appreciated. I keep expecting these guys to just fly away, and yet they don't. Alright, is that all of them? Are there any mini hawks which I missed? Okay. I guess not. Now comes the main issue, just... Okay. I was gonna say just waiting around for all the enemies to show up, but... I guess that's not as big of an issue. I'm probably gonna regret using that Team Blast there, aren't I? Alright. What have you got for me? Gold... Omega, please! I need you to attack them, not just spin around in circles. I never really got this series' whole obsession with these ring-shaped projectiles. They were also a big thing in Shadow the Hedgehog as well. I mean, naturally you'd think it would be a bit of a disadvantage to have this ring projectile, which you can probably just hop through. I mean, I get it in terms of game mechanics, but at the same time it does seem a little bit silly. At the very least we got power character up to max, so we can just go ham with our rat-a-tat-tat missiles. You can very easily imagine Omega falling off this platform though, so probably not gonna do too much of that. Oh, hello. Goodbye. Still, it's kind of a shame that these robot attack levels don't have the any sort of scoring limit to them, because I could definitely imagine once again this being quite a fun little like multiplayer thing to do, like see who can rack up the most score killing robots first. Well, it kind of feels like a missed opportunity for the multiplayer, which is weird considering this arguably has the second best multiplayer in the series, in that it only has a slightly worse multiplayer suite than Adventure 2. Still have a sniffle. Okay, I can see what Omega's strengths are. His missiles do like a bunch of damage, which I don't think... It just... His AoE just racks up a whole bunch of damage, especially in like a confined area. Let me just use Chaos Inferno right here. There we go. And everyone's up to max, meaning we can just go ham and we don't have to worry about any Space Invader likes. We can just continue to wade through all these robots. And that's the power of fly formation. You can just completely demolish entire walls of enemies like that. Like, look at this. I will still retain that, at the very least for combat, fly formation is basically the best class in the game. With just how easy they're able to just completely wade through enemies without any real risk of dying compared to, say, Omega. I think we're coming up to the end here, though, so... Not sure whether this is the last one. Still gonna use this regardless. Yeah! Like, even here, just the sheer scale of this arena just I always thought this looked really cool as a kid. I mean, this area in particular... Okay, here we go again. Look at how much damage that does. Oh, and somehow I knocked off his helmet anyways. Not sure how I managed that, but I'll take it. Only real issue with Omega's missiles, despite how powerful they are, a little bit inconsistent. At least on single targets. Okay. Final zone. I was definitely expecting this to take longer than the others, just... Oh, there's the textures again. That's not a problem on the GameCube version. You may be wondering then why I'm playing the PC version rather than trying to find some means of playing the GameCube version. Mostly because this is the version that was recommended to me for modding. Favorite member of Team Dark? That's definitely an interesting question because, well... Honestly, I quite like all of them, but part of me does kind of... I think I do ultimately have to throw it over to Shadow. It's like, I want to like Omega a lot more, but especially with how he's been treated in modern times as just a bit of a filler background character. Like, especially in Forces, that was just cruel and unusual. Like in the base game, he just shows up at the end for like 5 seconds and does nothing. Despite having a fair bit of setup near the start of the game. I will say though, I do, especially after that recent Tales 2, with how I'm not really a big fan of the current voice for Omega, I do have my personal preferred Omega voice. Like I said, I'll probably showcase it a little bit later in the stream. Well, basically at the end, once we're done with everything. We are getting quite close to the end though, again, Final Fortress goes on way too long. But yeah, in terms of favorite member of Team Dark, even though it is basically the Shadow show for the most part, it is Shadow. Just bypass these two. Oh yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. I know what you mean by... Yeah, this is definitely, at least from a... Well, from most standpoints, this is definitely one of my favorite levels in the game. Aside from Frog Forest. Like, the scale of it, the action on display, the visuals, it's just so strong and emblematic of this game, and it's still really... I can't help but question as to why this wasn't chosen for Generations over Seaside Hill. Like, I get Seaside Hill is a likable level and all, it definitely has its own fun segments, but when I think of Sonic Heroes, I definitely think more so of this level than anything else. Just in terms of all the various, you know, assaulting Eggman battleship levels, like Wing Fortress or Skydeck, I think this definitely has to be my favorite. Or I would say that, but I do have a slight issue with it. And it's, well, you've probably seen it already. We're about to see it again real soon right here. That being these guys, the E2000s. They're just really annoying to to really defeat unless you really get lucky with placement like that. I suppose thinking about memorable stages, I can't help but wonder if more Sonic games were to get levels in generations, like for example Lost World, Forces, what exactly would their generation representation in generations be? Because I guess Metropolitan Highway for Forces, I feel a big stickler for what exactly level would be represented in something like Generations would be Frontiers for obvious reasons. I feel realistically the only way you could really represent Frontiers in Generations would be with its boss fights, but even then, they'd still likely pale in comparison. Unless you did the same approach you did with Perfect Chaos and basically made the entire boss fight into a level. It's still so satisfying to do, in all honesty. Yeah, for Forces, the main ones that come to mind are Sunset Heights or Metropolitan Highway. I would say Metropolitan Highway, but again, that's basically just... What happened? What? Shadow, please. Only question is, which boss would you do for Frontiers? Because I know a lot of people would likely say Knights. Part of me wants to say Wyvern, because I'm pretty certain that the first half of the Wyvern fight was basically a level in of itself, which was the actual getting to it, running across that weird quick step section, which it just randomly spawns for some reason. Wyvern for me makes the most sense from a gameplay standpoint, but in terms of a fan standpoint, it would probably have to be either Giganto or the End Supreme. At least those are the ones which I'm pretty sure most people would flock to. Then again, Knight would probably be a surprise option. Yeah, Wyvern makes the most sense as a Generations boss fight, though again, Knight would be interesting to see. If anything, just to see how they top the giant sword at the end. I will admit it's definitely been a while since I've seen many, but I really should have saved the theme blast for this segment. How am I supposed to get through the... Okay, I guess I just gotta play it real careful, like, just gotta bounce on these guys, and then I have to contend with you. And that, again, is why I deem Omega the worst power-type character, because that happens more often than not. I feel Omega might actually be part of why Team Talk's missions are so much more difficult compared to the rest of the cast, because at least they have options in order to not fly off the platforms and die. Alright, at the very least I know now not to save the Team Blast for the last part. If I can actually build it up in time for dealing with that E2000 beforehand. Yeah, Team Dark's levels can get pretty rough, as you can probably tell. Just thinking, I haven't really said much about Shadow's more modern characterization though, haven't I? Then again, at this point, what really else can be said aside from not good? Like, I know for Shadow the Hedgehog there was a lot of inspiration for stuff like, especially the, more specifically the Underworld movies. I know they were a big influence on Shadow, alongside, I think, Ratchet and Clank? Allegedly a Ratchet and Clank or Jak and Daxter. Should probably find means of playing those on stream at some point. I haven't really... It is a bit of a crime for me to say this, I know, but I haven't actually played Ratchet and Clank or Jak and Daxter before. It's something which I know I have to fix at some point, and yeah. Still think that's a pretty iconic shot, just them flying towards Final Fortress. Now here's where things get really tough. With stuff like that where you have to just do homing attacks like that, and already we're just facing up against 2 egg hammers in order to progress. And once again, very nearly falling off the edge. Just, I don't see how people manage to make do with Omega, in all honesty. Just, wow, his combo is kind of bad. Does this actually go up anymore? Guess I'll have to do. Always thought this sort of stuff was pretty cool, though. Just, I thought stuff like Frontiers kind of lacks, in all honesty. Just letting the stages speak for themselves in a way. You see stuff like this and just how big the levels are, which, you know, blessing and curse, considering Team Dark especially. Alright, and we don't even get an egg hammer here, we get the gold E2000s, which have even more health than normal. Never liked those guys. And yet they're going to be the ones we contend with the most this time. This is going to be the longest level. I'll just say that. This is the longest level by far. Thankfully, though, I don't need to worry about picking up any keys, since I managed to come in clutch with the Emerald last stream. Even though I'm still dreadfully nervous that I could fall off these rails at any given point. This sort of setup is pretty cool, though. I will say, during my off time, I may have gotten back into playing a little bit of Sonic Battle R. Not too much, because I feel I want to really... That might be stream material. There we go. You can just bop their helmet off again, just like that. Come on. There we go, he's stun locked. He's given up, he's stuck. That's a very dangerous question. You have no idea what kind of power that would... You are dealing with horrors you cannot possibly comprehend. That's the answer I'd probably give, but if I had to choose one, like, gun to my head, make one real sort of thing? That's an interesting question. Because in theory, Shadow would probably be a good option. You know, ultimate life form, cannot possibly die, could probably synthesize his blood in order to make life-saving medicines. But then that would probably also imply the existence of the Black Arms, which I don't think we're really... Actually thinking about it, the Black Arms aren't exactly the most threatening of invaders. As we're seeing Gun, as you see in Adventure 2, Gun sort of is more of an equal match for them, which is kind of weird in these sort of alien invasion stories, the humans actually being on equal terms. Right, now here's the main part which I remember taking up a lot of time. Thankfully, excuse me, there we go. Thankfully, however, one of the main issues I had with this level, that being these guys, I now have a workaround. I can just easily just keep doing this, and look at that. They're just sort of stuck in place. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's up with these cannons, by the way, just... There we go. But in terms of what character I'd make real, I mean, Tails is also an interesting option, considering his, technological prowess. But then again, the thing is, with a lot of these characters that also have to contend with the, let's just say, odd fan base, and I don't think I'd want to wish that upon any of them. So, if I had to pick one, probably Shadow, but preferably none of them. Also didn't realize you could still use the cannons while one of your teammates is on the switches. Also kind of a shame that the dummy rings can't really do anything against shields. I'll just stick to Shadow for this, he's probably the safest bet. I keep getting worried I'm just gonna fly off the edge now. It's like I'm actively dissuaded from using Omega aside from times when I really need to, like right now. There we go. Now I'm taking it back how weirdly powerful some of these fans are. Oh, great. Here we go again. Just gotta remember to land on the platform this time. There we go. Got a little bit greedy last time, and now we're coming up to arguably the most egregious part of this level, at least in my opinion. Just this whole final gauntlet segment, which I always thought took way too long as a kid. Let's see how long it takes us this time. I say that because this is generally the sort of place where you want like multiple team blasts. Like you could very easily just spend one to get rid of this set of robots, and then you're basically hosed for the next set. Alright, there we go. At least this one isn't so bad, considering I can just do this. Or not. Guess I'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way, just wait for him to fall down like that and just wail on him. Okay. Not doing too bad so far, but then again... Oh, I actually got it that time. It's weird. It's like, I know I can just get rid of the helmets with the speed characters, but it's super inconsistent to do. It is kind of crazy though. I never realized you could actually do that as a kid. And now here's the part where you actually want the Team Blast. I know that for certain, because you got all these guys, and then you can just do this. Oh yeah. Starting to feel it now. Super close to the end. Pretty sure it's just this last segment with the lasers to go. Could be wrong. Well, I mean, it's kind of interesting thinking about how this contrasts with something like the Death Egg, because it's just a big flying fortress. We've seen big flying fortresses from Eggman already, with Wing Fortress and the Egg Carrier. Seems weird that we don't get something like, I suppose this thing is quite big. Okay, now here comes the hard part. Gotta outrun all these lasers right here. And we gotta outrun this last laser. Can we make it? Yes, we can. I always thought you needed fly formation to dodge that when I was younger, but you can just speed your way to the end and just do it like that. And there we go. Longest level in the game. Not as long as I was expecting. I was expecting this to be like 14 minutes. Yet here we are, able to do it in under 10. I know it's not exactly a speed run, but I'm happy with that. Oh yeah, big numbers. And now we're at the end, we can just have a little sort of victory lap here. Nice little victory lap with the Egg Emperor. I just realized those cannons are just floating in the background. I always thought it weird how this just showed up in the 3DS version of Generations. Like, it's cool to see it again, but you'd think there'd be, like, more appropriate bosses that you could choose from than, like, the Advanced era. Oh yeah, I think that's the first time we've actually seen his charge attack. All these bosses do something similar, where if you fall behind, they just bum rush you. Except this one sort of makes a point of it. Alright, let's see how fast I can burn this one down this time. Might get it wrong. I was right in front of you, you fool! Omega, what are you doing? Yeah, this is basically the meta strat for dealing with the Egg Emperor. Look how fast his health is going down now. There we go. So yeah, longest boss fights in the game with this particular type at the very least is the Egg Albatross. Which is weird to think about. Mostly because it doesn't stop, in all honesty, that's why. When these bosses stop, they're very easy to just burn down with what your character is choosing. Not sure why Omega would be satisfied with just dealing with another fake Robotnik, which that one obviously is since it's in a pool of liquid metal. And here's the big twist. Mass-produced shadow androids, which never get followed up on outside of a story one of the branching stories in Shadow the Hedgehog. I don't know, it's just her particular quirky walking style, I suppose. Now, of course, we get the main theme again. I will admit, not exactly the biggest fan of the lyrics as time has gone on. I mean, they're fine, but generally speaking, in terms of melody at the very least, this is definitely one of my favorites in the game. Right up there with the main... Honestly, to be honest though, I kind of like all the themes in this game. But if I had to choose my favorites, it's difficult, because I love the, I love the energy of Team Sonic's theme. Team Chaotix's theme is just chaotic. I'd say, by proxy then, the weakest would be Team Rose's, who obviously we're going to do next. It is weird though, because in terms of themes, Team Rose's song "Follow Me" is sort of the closest to like an actual song with its lyrics. Even though for the most part it's basically just Amy's new theme, which honestly kind of weird why they never really went with that. It feels weird that, despite, you know, all the nostalgic callbacks in the likes of Frontiers, we never really got any of the character themes back. The last time we heard any of them, at least in official capacity, outside of spin-offs of course, was probably Black Knight, which pretty much was all the throwback callback, even though it was a weird decision to use them in that game. In terms of nostalgic throwbacks, I think that was all that game really needed. So thinking in terms of comparing the campaigns, it's kind of tricky, because I'd say in terms of the quality of the campaigns, Team Dark and Team Chaotix are equally weak for different reasons. Most of them just burning down to a lot of the levels just going on for too long, because I'm just gonna say it. And this was something which 06 obviously didn't really learn from. Sonic levels really shouldn't be longer than 5 minutes. I mean, I suppose you can get... I'd say longer than 5 minutes is a bit of a stretch. Yeah, we're basically at the end now. There's just credits, just gonna let them roll out. I suppose since we're here, we may as well go on to what my, I suppose fan-preferred version of the voice would be for Omega. So let me just pull that up real quick. You might hear it on stream, so, be prepared. Hopefully I don't get glass for this.
Would you care for some tea?
That probably wasn't worth it, but I still wanted to do it anyway. Yeah. It feels weird because especially with how aggressive the likes of Omega can be, something akin to a Dalek voice really feels like it would be fitting for him as opposed to whatever they have Roger doing for him now. But yeah, that was Team Dark. Admittedly, a little bit of a slug. I think I almost read saying this. I think Team Dark's campaign might be the weakest of the bunch, mostly just how much Omega's moveset drags them down. Because, you know, Vector doesn't have the same problems Omega has with just careening himself off the stage in the middle of his combos. regardless, next time we'll be moving on to Team Rose and the last story. Hopefully I'll be able to get the last Chaos Emerald by then, but until then, I'll see you then. Take care. Goodbye.